Hey everyone, Wayne here. Today we're going to do an overview and review of the Confederate Rebellion, published by White Dog Games, designed by David Kershaw. I hope this video will be a little shorter than my usual overviews/review videos because what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a overview. I'm going to try to keep it a little more concise than usual, and then tell you my thoughts, give you an overall review, because I'm going to do a separate playthrough where I play through hopefully an entire game. Yeah, I think we can do a whole game. Yeah, I promise you guys that. We'll get through a whole game. So this will just be an overview. So if you want to see this overview and then a review of my final thoughts at the end, let's go ahead and jump in here. So Confederate Rebellion. This is a game that I have an unboxing on my channel. This is a game that White Dog Games was kind enough to send me, express some interest in it. They said, hey, check it out, show it off, and here I am. And I'll tell you right now, I do like this game, and we'll dive into that with my final thoughts. But in this game, what I like about this compared to some of the other Solitaire American Civil War games is in this game, you get to play as the Union. There's technically a two-player kind of variant, some rules for that. So if you are interested in that, that is in the rulebook. Just throw that out there quick. But the main part of the game is that you play as the Union, and you're trying to stop the Confederate Rebellion. So I like that because, you can go and look at games that, I think I talked about this in my unboxing, but the games like The Lost Cause from Victory Point Games or Jeff Davis, which I love, also from White Dog Games. Robert Ben Madison designed that one. Fantastic States of Siege style game. This one is it's a lot simpler. It's a little more based around dice rolling as opposed to, there's no chit pulling or card drawing in this one. It's based around dice rolling, but it's nice to be able to play as a Union as well. I've had a couple people ask me, which game should I get? If you can, get them both, because then you can have a game where you play as the Confederacy, and then you have a game where you can play as the Union. You can, whichever mood suits you, or if you only prefer one side or the other for gaming purposes, there you go, you're covered. So, all right, so with this game here, I have it all set up right now for the base game. Your goal in this game as the Union is you're going to go ahead and reduce the rebel build points to 0. If you're able to do that, you win. As part of doing that, there's several different things you have to do. So as you're playing through the turns, you're going to want to do, and a lot of this stuff is actually on the map. And if you can't quite read it in this video, like if you can't quite see it, trust me, when you're playing the game, it's a smaller map. I think very, very good size, perfect size for the game actually. But as you are reading the map, you're going to have rebel build points, Union build points, the different charts they're going to roll on, the sequence of play, the combat results table. You have so much stuff right on the map, and unlike some games where they'll have stuff written down, but it's usually you'd have to go to the rulebook anyway. With this, once you know the game, it only takes 1 or 2 playthroughs. This is almost all you need. I mean, you're gonna be able to go in here and look at there's only literally a couple little things basically tied to rebel movement that you may, and that's probably the one thing I would say, the rebel movement phase you may need a little help with from the rulebook. But other than that, everything is right on here, which is fantastic. I love that in my games. So I think I'm jumping ahead to my review basically. Well, hey, whatever. Hey, share my thoughts while we're playing, right? Or while we're going over the game. So I think that's just fine. So let's see, where was I? Okay, so yeah, so your goal is the Union, right? To win is to reduce the rebels' build points to 0. How do you do that, Wayne? Well, pretty simple. It's actually not only obviously is in the rule book, but really right here, this tells you. So it tells you the number of available rebel build points right on the map. And I'll run through it. If you're the rebels, if you control Atlanta or Richmond, so historically, obviously Richmond the capital, Atlanta, very important city, you get a build point. If the Mississippi is not Union controlled, so as you can see from the map here, the Ohio River, Mississippi River, and what they're really looking at is New Orleans, Vicksburg, and Memphis, coming down from Cairo. Historically, obviously with Grant coming down, siege of Vicksburg, taking over Vicksburg, and then the invasion from the sea, taking over New Orleans, that sealed off the Mississippi, and that was a huge part of the Confederacy's economy. Shipping out through the Mississippi, shipping cotton to Mexico for transport, having access to, Louisiana, Texas, etc. All those things really factored into, closing off the Mississippi. And so that's why it's listed as a big part of the game. And these are tied into the rebels when they get their build points, which we'll go into when we cover the rebel build phase. So, All right, and then there's going to be two things that are tied to die rolls. One is the number of fleets that the Union has in the blockade box. Again, historically, the Union, doing if you know a lot about the American Civil War, some people may not know as much. The Anaconda Plan was the ultimate kind of strategic plan of the Union, which was strangle the Confederacy, right? Cut off their economy. They're going to lose the war that way. With the blockade box, you're, abstracted having your Union fleet units blockading the rebel ports. Now, as you're buying them, they're in the transport box, so they can be used for transporting troops, or they can be used to blockade. And when it comes to the rebel turn, they're going to roll. And if they roll greater than the number here, however many units you have, how many fleets you have, they're going to get a build point. If you have 6 fleets in the blockade box, obviously with a 1d6, they can't roll greater than that. So you've effectively strangled them, the rebel economy, when it comes to the ports. The other one will be d6 greater than number of Union-controlled rebel ports. So not just the actual blockade itself, but the actual ports, which you can see there's a little ship icon, so very handy. Everything you need is right on the map. I love that. With Richmond, Wilmington, Charleston, down in Florida, Mobile, New Orleans, and Galveston. You're seeing the icon. So if you can go ahead and get to the point where you control these ports, now whether you land from the ocean or you invade from the land, or you invade from the ocean with your transports, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, you take these ports, you block the Mississippi. If you control Atlanta and Richmond, you're done. You win. I mean, basically, you're going to win. You strangle, and that's literally what happened, right? You strangle the Confederacy. There may still be some units left. There may still be some areas they control. Doesn't matter. At that point, it's game over. And that's the historical way to win. That's historically what happened. And that's how you win in this game. I really like how that works. I think it's very thematic. I think it really ties into how the game works. How, as the game goes on, not only is that your ultimate victory, right? Like your ultimate goal, right, to win the game. How you win it is historically how the Union won it. And it slowly strangles the Confederacy. Starts limiting them, drawing them in, eliminating from the Mississippi. You're encroaching on Richmond. Maybe you're coming in through the Western Theater. You're taking Atlanta, whatever it is. Or maybe you're just landing. You're starting to land some troops on the coastlines. Whatever the case is, that's how you're going to win. So that's the ultimate way for victory as the Union. Let's go ahead and jump into the sequence of play here. We'll run through it real quick, and then I'll kind of give you my final thoughts, although I've already been describing kind of what I like, don't like, which for the most part, it's a lot of things I like. So, all right, sequence of play. The game starts off, game turn marker over your turn track. Turn 1, 1861, so start at the very beginning. Goes up to 20 turns. Now, and that's, 1865, so that's really the end of the war. It's really realistic, I guess, to go to 20. You could say the Union won at the last minute historically, maybe. In my games, I've either generally lost or won well before that. So it doesn't generally go, in my experience, go the full 20 turns, which that would, I think, draw the game out a little bit. And that's okay. I usually end up winning or losing. End of 62, 63 is a big one, maybe 64. So most of the time I finish a little faster historically. Let's go back to sequence of play. So Union build phase. The Union player, you're starting off, and again, this is the setup initially. You're always going to have, as a Union, you're going to have 5 build points per turn. And what I like to do, I mark it off with an extra die. I just set it there, and I have it as 5 build points. You're going to spend those build points on your different types of units. There's only a few different types of units in the game, but that's okay. They're it's very abstracted because obviously you're covering the entire war, and you're going to play a whole game in, once you're familiar with it, an hour. So to do that is something else, because Jeff Davis, which I love from Robert Madison, that game takes 4 or 5 hours to play. This one, I play it in an hour now, no problem. I think the other day I had a game that went 45 minutes. So once you know the rules, once you have it down, you're flying through. So, all right, so what you can do is you can buy, obviously, Union armies, and you can see I have them all over the map here. We already have our forts out. The Union player doesn't really buy more forts. So you have Washington, D.C. and Fort Monroe here. You can buy gunboats to go on the river, which will obviously help you with capturing the Mississippi, and then also moving troops down the Mississippi. And then you can also buy your fleets. So your fleets that start off in the transport box, which you can use to transport armies. or you can move them during the Union movement phase to the blockade box. So very simple. Every unit costs 1. Fleets, there's a limit. You can only buy 1 per turn. So you can't, with your first turn, you can't go ahead and just buy 5 fleets and say, oh, I have 6 fleets now, because you start off with 1. Put them all in the blockade box. Boom. Confederacy is blockaded. No, there's a buildup. I mean, you have to, every turn, now I'd recommend probably every turn buying 1. But you can only buy a max of 1 per turn. The rest is pretty much you can do whatever you want. The other units that you would buy would be generals. So you see we have McClellan. We have Rosecrans on the map right now. You can go ahead and you draw them randomly from the cup. And then they're going to have their rating. McClellan's 1, +1. Rosecrans is +1 or minus, depending on how if you're figuring, the Rebels combat phase or your combat phase. Obviously, you have guys like, say, I don't know, Grant, General Grant. Sorry, I feel like it's not zooming in properly when I hold the shit up. Usually it does. Sorry about that. General Grant, +/-2. Obviously, much better general. Sherman, +/-2. So, you're going to start off with McClellan and Rosecrans. Not great generals. You can spend a build point later on. You can either just place them in your territory, or you can go ahead and sack one of your current generals. So say you're like, all right, McClellan, you got to go. Draw a new one. So you don't know. You may not get something great, though. You may get Fighting Joe Hooker with his 1. So now you got basically the same rating. You just effectively wasted a build point. Although if you get him out of the cup, it means you're closer to Sherman and Grant. So it's kind of that trade-off, that draw. All right, so those are your build points you're spending. I believe I covered all of that. You're building up your armies. The Union, when you start, you're definitely going to be building up your armies, right? You're going to be building up as much as you can, really, before you attack. You're kind of going to be on the defensive at first. You can launch offensive depending on where you want to go, but you have to be careful because odds are, because when you're recruiting, obviously you're on the offensive generally because you're the one who has to, complete these different objectives basically to win the game and stop the Confederacy. Well, you're going to have armies that go down here, and you can't recruit. When you're in Arkansas, you can't recruit and you can't add troops. You're going to have to move them down there or build up in the first place. So you're going to do a lot of that. After you run through the Union build phase, you've spent all your build points. Okay, go on to Union movement phase. And that's very simple. So you're going to do things like move your fleets from transport to blockade or back and forth. You can maybe move your gunboats down the Mississippi. Say, all right, you're moving down to Memphis. And you can bring troops with you. You're going to, and then they're going to try to attack. If they don't take the land, they're going to go back. And again, I'm going to cover as much as I can, but I'm not going to cover every little single detail because when we do our playthrough, we'll cover in a lot more detail. So, and then you'll have forts. You're going to have to try to take the forts, and then obviously, say the Union gunboat fighting the Rebel gunboats. Be just like standard combat, trying to win those battles. Same time when you're moving your armies, you're going to move them into, say, enemy territory. So you're going to move, McClellan with his armies to Manassas. You're going to fight Lee here. Your conductor combat phase, which is the next phase. If you have troops in the back, so say you're starting your turn and you're like, all right, well, I need to reinforce the front lines a little bit. I really don't need this army in Iowa. You can move them 2 instead of just 1. You can move them 2. Movement will be along these lines of connections here. So you see the straight, like the solid line here. Oops. And then you'll also see these dotted lines. So the solid line is a land, line of connection through the land. Can't be stopped. You just go ahead and just move along that line of connection, LOC. Now, if the dotted ones are actually based around the river, so if it's a river crossing, you're either crossing the Ohio River or the Mississippi River. If the enemy has a gunboat in that spot, you cannot go across that LOC. So that prevents certain movements. You can kind of bottle up the Confederacy in Kentucky here, where they can't get across to Ohio or Indiana. Historically, right? Historically accurate. You're going to have to, when you start, as the Union, you're in Cairo, you're going to have to build up your forces to move down the Mississippi to take Memphis and Vicksburg, because odds are you can't just go down in the Trans-Mississippi Theater here, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and just step over and suddenly take Vicksburg. You're going to have to fight your way down the Mississippi, or maybe come down in the Western Theater here. Just depends on your strategy. That's the nice thing about this game, is it's sandbox style. You can do whatever you want to do. Combat, let's jump into that. So you've done your movements. Union combat phase. So say you had McClellan down here, which would probably be a bad idea, but hey, it is what it is. And he's attacking Lee here in Manassas. Very simple. You're going to go ahead and you're going to add up the different die roll modifiers. What you're doing is, first of all, you're going to look at the odds. So you look at your troops first. And you're also going to count things like if there's any forts, include those as well. we're going to go ahead and look at your troops. So in this case, we have 3 Union armies and 3 Rebel armies. That's a 1-to-1. So it's going to go ahead and just be just no modifier for that. If the Union we had say 1 more, 4-to-3, we'd get the +1 modifier. And then once you get to 2-to-1, so say we had 6 Union and they only had 3 Rebels, that would be a +2, etc., etc. So right now with 3-to-3, it's even. Now we'd go ahead and we'd look at our generals. We have a +1 for McClellan on the attack. However, General Lee is a 3, very powerful. So that's a -3. So our armies were even, so it was a +0. McClellan is a 1, so we were at +1. Yeah, +1. Lee's a -3. So now we're at -2. Yeah, that would not be a good roll. Because then, simple, 1d6, and you go ahead and consult the combat results table, and it's going to tell you, and with our -2, right? Let's go ahead and roll. See what happens. So we're attacking. Okay, so 0 or less, the attacker loses half and retreats. So, and you round up. So we have 3 armies at this point. Half would be it's a 1.5. You round up to 2, so we lose 2 armies. We'd be down to 1 Union army, and we'd retreat back to Maryland in shame and defeat. So, knowing that, right, how that works. And obviously, in the case of this, with a -2, I mean, literally, I don't think there's any way to get a good roll because a 6, 5, anything is going to be marked down to 4 or 3. 4 is roll again, no modifiers. A 3 is both sides lose a third, attack or retreat. So in this particular case, obviously, you would never want to force this combat as the Union because the best result you could get, you would cause them to lose a unit. You would also lose a unit. You could retreat. I don't know if you'd want that. Maybe if you think like you want to wear them down, you want to wear Lee's army down, maybe that might be a strategy, but I wouldn't recommend it. So that shows you the generals are a huge part of it. The generals really, because they're not just a plus in the sense of like an army, right? It's not 3 + 3 for armies. That 3 is really more of like a, what do you call it? Like a shift. Like a shift in the odds, right? So it's not just a +1 army. That's like 3 odd shifts, basically. The equivalent of, right? Because we're talking about the armies even are +0. If I had 4-to-3 +1, if I had 6-to-3 +2, well, Lee himself adds a +3. So that shows 2 things. 1, how badass Lee is in this game. And 2, as a Union, you may want to upgrade your generals, try to get Grant, try to get Sherman, try to get those +2 generals to help you, because you're going to need them. That, or you're going to need overwhelming force. You're going to need a lot of Union troops during combat. So, all right. Hopefully that explains combat. And by the way, the river combat is effectively the same. You'll compare gunboats. You do count forts, just like you do in land. If you're not able to eliminate everything in river combat. So say you were at Memphis here, and we went down and we attacked, and let's say there was a fort. Let's say we're attacking Vicksburg. Pretend we'd already taken Memphis, and we're attacking, and we eliminate the rebel gunboat, but there's still a fort at Vicksburg. We're going to have to retreat back up here. Plus a gunboat can't destroy a fort anyway. You would need land units, also land. But say we eliminate the gunboat, and we have our land units, and they attack, and the fort wins. It's not eliminated. We go have to retreat back to Memphis. And that just kind of shows you how combat works when you kind of have to plan ahead a little bit as well. Not only are you building up your forces as a Union, you have to plan ahead, especially when it comes to the river combat and moving down the Mississippi and taking the Mississippi. It's going to take you a while, not only to build up your forces, but as you kind of work your way down, defeating gunboats, and then defeating the land armies and the forts, hopefully. All right, so that is it for the Union. So we've done, the Union has their build phase, their movement, and then any combat that, for their units that are now in the same land area. The Rebels would then do their build phase. Now, the Rebel build phase it's random, but it actually works really well. So how it is that, and I touched on this when we talked about how to win, the number of available Rebel build points, is based on, do they control Atlanta or Richmond? They get 1. Is the Mississippi Union controlled? If not, they get another 1. Then you roll a d6 if it's greater than the number of fleets in the blockade box, and then a d6 greater than the number of Union-controlled Rebel ports. So you can have a max of 4, and then it's going to go down from there. So as the game goes on, you're going to start at 4, hopefully anyway, right, if you're doing your job. Then it's going to drop to 3, then it's going to drop to 2, and that's hopefully, so that shows that the diminishing economy and resources of the Confederacy. By the way, I do see this video is already at 20 minutes, so Maybe it's not going to be as short as I thought it was. Sorry, everybody. But I just really want to cover the game. I really like the game, and I just want to cover everything. So, again, we'll have a separate playthrough as well. So, all right. So that is the Rebel build phase. Oh, I'm sorry. That's how they get their points. Excuse me. So that's how they get the build points. So you start off beginning, the first turn, odds are they'll probably get 4 points still. I mean, probably, even if you move right away to blockade, all you have to do is roll more than 1, maybe 2 if you had bought another one. Okay, say they have 4 full points. There's a chart right here, Rebel build point roll. Again, it is random, so it seems like, there's a lot of randomness. It actually works really well, just because the options make sense, right? So, for example, you have your 4. You're going to go ahead and roll. And let's just do a couple rolls. So, we spend the Rebels spend their first one, so down to 3. They roll a 2. And it's all on the map. Love this. All on the map. 1, 2, or 3, roll a 2. 1 army on a general. Now you say, well, which general? You don't have to roll anymore. How it works is, for each turn, the first army always goes to Lee. Because, well, Lee's a badass, right? You got to give him his army. Army of Northern Virginia. That's pretty much the most important part of the Civil War. At least, historically, right? So, boom, he gets an army. Now, let's keep rolling, because I bet we're going to get some more reinforcements. So, it's always Lee first in a turn. All right, we rolled a 1, so that is for another build point. So that means a 1, 2, or 3, 1 army on a general. You said, well, who gets it now? It goes over to Bragg. So, Braxton Bragg, he gets an army. So, go ahead, figure it out. You can count them. And, the units will have like a 1, a 2, and then there's ones that are 3, 4, etc. So, you just build them however you want. And tied into that, I'll show you guys, there are these little holding boxes which you use, and I do use them when I'm playing the game, just a full playthrough. Army of Northern Virginia, Army of the South, Army of the West Virginia, Army of the Potomac. So instead of having stacks and messing with these stacks constantly, say with Lee, you'll go ahead and put Lee in the Army of Northern Virginia box, and then put the Army of Northern Virginia counter on the map in Manassas or wherever it is. So that way you just have to move around one counter, and you can go ahead and conduct a combat with these open holding boxes. Love that as well. Great feature. Really improves ease of play. It's not necessary, but it just improves ease of play. So, all right, as you continue, and then the next Rebel Army, which we roll a 4, and we'll run through that. So the next, say we had rolled a 1, 2, or 3, the next Rebel Army, we then go to Kirby Smith. Now if we rolled again and got another Rebel Army, it would go back to Lee. So Lee's a priority, then Braxton Bragg. Kirby Smith gets the leftovers. Sorry, Kirby. All right. We roll a 4 here, so that is one of the other results. 1 army per random region. Now, what does that mean? So that, instead of sending the armies to the rebel generals, that would be, you look at this random region chart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Look at the top. Kind of ignore this number on the side. I wish they hadn't put that on this map, because that confuses people. Ignore that. Just look at the 1 through 6 up top. You roll your 1d6. You get a 1. Look at region 1, and then just go down and see what is the first rebel region controlled, and you put an army there. So in this case, the Missouri, where I live, boom. You go ahead, 1 rebel army. Nope, now there's 2. And you go ahead and add the reinforcement in. Say Missouri happened to be Union controlled. They had pushed the Confederacy back, and it's Union controlled. Okay, just go down the chart. Galveston, boom. 1 rebel army, nope, now 2, etc., etc. That 1d6 really goes up top, and then you just go ahead and go down to find the first region you control. So ignore that 1 to 6 on the side. Some people think you roll, 1d6 and 1d6 to try to find it. No. Ignore that. Just go ahead and roll the 1d6 and then look down. So the other thing that can happen, if you roll a 6, so as rebels, you roll for your build point, you're signing them. You roll the 6. Now you roll again, and there's a chart. Again, all on the map. Very nice. And now 1, 2, or 3, you add a fort per random region. So just like with the troops, with the armies, you roll 1d6, find a region, and go ahead and put a new rebel fort there. On a 4 or 5, a gunboat per rebel gunboat placement chart, which is also on the map right here. You roll 1d6. So which it's either going to be Memphis, Vicksburg, or New Orleans is going to get a rebel gunboat. If they already control it, roll again. If the Union, say, has Memphis and Vicksburg, it's only New Orleans left. Or they have Memphis and New Orleans, and there's Vicksburg left, just go ahead and place it right there. So that you're always going to add specifically where it's needed. And then if you roll a 6, the Union player, and it's kind of like this one, Union player must remove a gunboat or a fleet. That hurts. So then it comes back to you as a Union to decide, oh man, do I get rid of a gunboat that's already on the river? Or do I go ahead and remove one of my fleets in the transporter blockade box? So that is the rebel build phase. As you can see, it's based on die rolls, But even though you'd think like, oh, that's a lot of randomness, it works really well because it's all tied into the priorities where, yeah, you may roll, okay, random army. But you know that first army's going to Lee. You know the second one's going to Bragg. And then if you get a third, which it doesn't happen a whole lot, but it does, Kirby Smith gets those leftover troops. Same thing with building, building rebel gunboats, building forts. They're going to roll those die. It's going to happen. And odds are it's going to be somewhere helpful. It may be one where it's like a troop suddenly shows up in a random place. But for the most part, the rolls are going to work really well. All right, so that's the rebel build phase. Rebel movement. This one is one where you're probably going to have to reference the rulebook, but it's not complicated at all. Nothing in this game is complicated. During the rebel movement phase, basically you're looking at the rebels as the Union. You can move any of your armies, assuming they're in friendly territory. Yes, if you're entering enemy territory, you have to have generals, right? Makes sense. You'll just send unled troops into the enemy territory. As the rebels, kind of the same deal, right? They're not going to be moving their regular armies around all over the place. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be moving their generals. So, very simple. We're going to start like this. Let's go ahead and look at Army of Northern Virginia, led by Lee. You're going to go ahead, and there's a chart, and it's in the rule book. I made a little cheat sheet. I'll upload it to Board Game Geek, but basically, roll a 1d6, and you add their modifier. So Lee's a +3. So we had 3 + 3. The chart is going to tell you 3 different things they're going to do. And I'll just explain, kind of read through the chart. On a modified roll of 4 or less, the general takes no action. So with Lee, really the only time he sits there is if you roll a 1, because he's a +3. So 1 + 3 is 4. So 4 or less, he just hangs out. He's biding his time, right? Training, resting his troops. On a modified roll of 5, the general will take no action if there is a Union force greater than his own in an adjacent region connected to him by an LOC. However, if there is a equal size or weaker, he will attack. So for instance, right now he's in Manassas. So say we had rolled a 2. +3. We got a 5. That means he's going to look. And from Manassas, he can go to Fort Monroe or he can go into Maryland. You have the Union Army. There's 3 troops here in Maryland. Currently we're at 4 for the rebels, for the Army of Northern Virginia. And then there's 1 plus a fort to 2 in Fort Monroe. Now, he doesn't prioritize weaker or stronger. He's basically going to do it randomly at this point. Because what it would be is if either of these was stronger, he would ignore it. But they're both either the same strength or weaker. They're actually both weaker. So he's going to look, and you can do it random. You can do it, Maryland is odds, Fort Monroe is evens. Usually how I would do it. Odds. So he's going up into Maryland. He's invading Northern Invasion here. So he's going to go ahead and fight McClellan in Maryland. Now, the other movement, so those are the 2 options. Now there's a third. On a modified roll of 6 or greater, so for Lee, it's just rolling a 3. Now remember, or if you look, Bragg is a 1, Kirby Smith is a 2. So Branson Bragg, you're going to roll a lot for him. He's going to sit there and chill. He ain't going to do a whole lot, which, he wasn't a great general, so that's how it works, right? And again, that shows you how the game is designed that the better generals like Lee, like Grant, Sherman, they're going to have those better modifiers. They're going to be a big change in how they work. For the Unions for combat, because you're not rolling for movement, you choose movement. But for the Confederates, it's going to be that movement factor when they decide to move. So the last thing is on a modified roll of 6 or greater, the general moves 1 region towards the nearest non-rebel controlled region connected by an LOC, basically regardless, unless the army would outnumber them by 3 to 1. So not suicidal, but they will make an attack that is maybe ill-advised. And that's just part of it, right? That's part of the roll. So that shows that an aggressive general, or if you roll high, he's going to just go for it no matter what. So, which, and let's be honest, that does fit in. I'd say fits in historically for a lot of these guys. So, all right, that's the movement phase. You're going to run through each of the generals to roll for each of them. And that's it. So you're going to have Lee, Bragg, and Kirby Smith. You make your rolls. Braxton Bragg, a 2 plus his 1, that's a 3. He's going to sit tight. Remember, 4 or less, he sits tight. Kirby Smith, 1 plus 2 is a 3. He sits tight. That's okay. They're building up their forces. At this point, anyway, you're not going to see a whole lot of attacks up into the Union territory because historically you didn't. It's really the fact that the rebels are going to be building up strength until you as the Union attacks. So, all right. Then you do rebel combat. I'm not going to go through it because it's the exact same as Union combat. The Army of Northern Virginia had been in Maryland. You'd go ahead, you'd look, compare the armies, find the odds, plus minus. Is there a fort? That's a -1 for the attacker. look at the general modifiers, +3 for Lee, -1 for McClellan in this case, and whatever your ultimate modifier is, you go ahead and roll, consult the combat results table, and enact the results. Now you go to the victory determination phase. That is those down here. So when I talked about, controlling Atlanta and Richmond, Mississippi Union controlled, if you have blocked their fleets, if there are, you have a great D6 greater than the number of Union controlled ports. If you have all those things, you've won. Now you also look at, so actually, let me start over. Sorry about that. I kind of misspoke. The game actually ends for you as a victor. So as you as the Union, you win. Sorry about that. My bad. I totally messed that explanation up. So in the actual for winning, it's when they're in the rebel build phase. My bad. I just thought of that. I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Yep, so during the rebel build phase. So if they go for build points and they come up with 0 build points, you win as the Union. Now, the rebels can win. How do the rebels win? Now, that's when you really check it in the victory determination phase, which is at the end of a turn, during this phase, if the rebels control 4 or more Union regions, the game ends and the rebels have won. If they control Washington, D.C., they win, which I have lost 2 games in a row when Lee and his damn Army of Northern Virginia went up, took Maryland, went over to Washington, D.C., defeated the garrison there, and basically wins the game. Which, since the rebels get to go last in a turn, once they take Washington, D.C., it's basically game over. So, hopefully that makes sense. Sorry if I messed up the explanation there a little bit. As the Union, you win when during the rebel build phase, they get no build points. So you control Atlanta and Richmond, you control the Mississippi, and you blockaded their ports, and you blockaded everything, and they get no build points, you're going to go ahead and win as the Union. The rebels, if they get 4 Union regions up here, which hopefully you guys notice on the map, you can see the little either stars and bars or stars and stripes, depending on who controls it, rebel or Union, and that determines who initially controls a region. All right, I think that's it. Victory determination phase. Yep, we covered it. Okay, also, if you go to turn 20 and you make it through turn 20, then you go ahead and consult a chart that'll tell you kind of what happens based on the chart. And that's it. That is the Confederate Rebellion. So this video went way longer than I thought it would, 32 minutes. Man, I almost could have played a game. No, what can I say? I got into explaining it. Here's the deal, folks. I love this game. This one is staying in my collection. I am really glad White Dog Games sent me this one to check out and to share with you guys. I hope that my explanation overview here really acted as my review. I mean, I'll go on for a little bit longer. You know me, but at the same time, you guys got it now, right? You know how the game works. You know my thoughts. You see what I like. What don't I like? Very little. I mean, I like the artwork on the counters, simple but very effective. I like that, Union and Rebel armies look different, right? Oh, I know what I'll cover. I'll cover one more thing. I'll give you my final thoughts here, and then we'll cover one more thing. So, actually, you know what? Let's dive into the other thing. So that's the base game. I don't even think I got to mention this. I should have mentioned this earlier. So this is the base game. The game comes with a bunch of variant rules that are really great. Things like Union and Rebel cavalry that can conduct raids, that have other special abilities. There are things that make the game harder, a lot harder for the Union. So say you're like, I figured this game out. I can kick the rebels' butts every time. Oh, really? How about you throw in port guns and rebel militia and rebel blockade runners? Boom. Those things are going to give that Confederate side, the AI, that much more options and that much harder for you to stop them. So those are variant rules. I just want to cover them really quick. Just want to talk about them because I don't want you to think that, well, the game's really basic. It is a basic mode, and I just showed you the basic mode, which to me, really, I've had a lot of fun with it. But throw in those variants. Odds, for the most part, you probably want to throw all of them in at once. You may want to do, say, just cavalry a game and then throw in the rest, but they're going to add some extra options for you, extra options for the rebels, and ultimately they're just going to make the game harder for you as the Union player. So, final thoughts. I love the game. It's a lot of fun, easy to play, and this is kind of 2 things I really like that I just want to say is sort of to counteract, right? To put this is like the balancing act in the scale versus something like, say, Jeff Davis, the Confederacy at War, from Robert Madison, White Dog Games. Fantastic game itself. It's also a much longer, more involved game. Not necessarily anything wrong with that. That is not a negative. That is just a reality of how the game is. You're getting a lot more in depth. You're getting more strategic options, more choices, but it's also going to take you 4 or 5 hours to play. Leave it set up. You play through, draw some chits, play. No problem there. This game, two things. One, you get to play as the Union. So, again, I talked about the Lost Cause. Jeff Davis, he plays the Confederacy. Hey, a lot of gamers do that. I've done it. It's a lot of fun in this, when you're playing these games. This game, you get to play as the Union. It's kind of nice that take the side as the Union and the side that was ultimately victorious, right? At the same time, I like that it's a fast-playing game. I like that, especially with the base game. The variants don't add a whole lot extra. They are gonna, they're gonna add a little bit more. It's okay. But I love the fact that it's quick playing. I love the fact that, I can, the hardest part, the part that takes the longest, I should say the hardest part that takes the longest is when you're thinking of how to spend your build points. Other than that, once you spend your build points, man, you're rolling. You're moving up. Let's see, move up Illinois. Illinois don't need no armies. Let's move them down to Cairo, add them in. You start building your forces. You're building up your gunboats in Cairo. You're going to go ahead and start spending build points to draw a general. I hope I get Sherman. I hope I get Grant. Place them here. Okay, cool. Now I got my army ready here in Cairo. Let's start moving down the Mississippi. Let's get to Memphis. Let's go to Vicksburg. You're going to have Lee rampaging with his +3 all over the place, tearing it up here in the Northeast. Eastern Theater. So you're going to have to, okay, but don't forget, you might be building up to kind of take over and kind of reduce their build points. Don't forget Lee, because trust me, he will take Washington, and then you're going to lose the game automatically. So overall, great game. Already said that. Hope you guys really enjoyed this overview and review. Again, it went a little longer than I had planned, but hey, what can I say? A good game makes me want to talk, makes me want to show it off, makes me want to play it. I want to get that playthrough. So look forward to that playthrough. And then finally, I know I say this on my videos, but I need you guys to go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I think last time I looked, we bumped the percentage down, by the way. We were at 65% of my viewers were not subscribed. We're down to 60%. But that does also mean that only 40% of my viewers who watch this video, so 40% of you who watch this are subscribed. Yay! 60% are not. Just subscribe. No harm to you, but it really helps me. It helps me to be able to share these, helps me to be motivated to just make these videos. And just share these games that I love with you guys and show them off. So hopefully everything's good. I'm going to stop rambling here because I feel like I'm rambling, but look forward to a playthrough on this game. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below, message me. You guys do a great job of that. Let me know what you think. Until next time, guys. Later.